It was Jessamine West, apparently, who said, "Fiction reveals truth that reality obscures." I've given Ralph Waldo Emerson credit for this in the past. It did seem something to me like Ralph Waldo Emerson would have said, and I guess it's one of those quotes that I just picked up on the internet and started using like we do sometimes. So I wanted to make that correction. I still think that the statement holds just as true as it did when I thought that Emerson said it. For myself, this idea is connected to Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell, and how they kind of helped me to understand that a lot of times we can use myths and stories to communicate deeper truths. Truth is sometimes obscured as we're trying to tell a true story, because it turns out that we're not really able to communicate a true story. It's part of the human condition, is that even if 12 people are in one space seeing the same incident, there very well may be 12 different stories about what happened if they're just trying to relate the facts. One part of my story is that I began to write my autobiography so that I could understand the stories I was telling myself. And I realized that even the person who was me in this instance, writing an autobiography, even I was really incapable of gathering all of the facts around my own story. And we see this sometimes if you listen to someone telling a story over many years, you'll see some of the details changed. I noticed this in my relationship with my own father. Like the details of the stories that he was telling started changing over the years, really just to suit his purpose more, to suit probably what he believed to be true. So isn't this interesting, the way we tell stories and what we believe are facts and how we perceive reality? This is just an interesting thing about the human condition and narrative to me. And of course, it touches on one of the most basic of philosophical questions: what is reality? I went and listened to Jessamine West a little bit talk about her work. Well, there was this one book she wrote where the facts that were available around a story didn't exist, as far as the records, that they didn't exist. So she went in and she told a story around that, a story based in truth. And also the fact that I made an error along this statement is quite interesting to me too. Truth is something that originates from within. We are to be our own authority on truth, on what is true. And that's where we get into this concept of truth being relative. And there are a lot of inquiries to make around that issue. If we somehow become brave enough to believe in relative truth, then we'll start wrestling with the idea of absolute truth, if we're making a deep and true inquiry into what truth really is. And it is in that inquiry where the fabric of reality starts to break down. And that's why this topic is so very difficult to cover. Yes, it gets weird. It gets strange, doesn't it? Like, what can we know and how do we know it? And from where does the truth arise? But we discover, after many years of research, both external research and internal research, we may discover that the truth is that which arises from within. There's a whole lot of philosophical groundwork, I suppose. Let's just say that humanity has been doing a lot of work on what it means to be able to say something true. And then it turns out that once we say it, once we name it, once we classify it, once we identify it with a word, that the truth loses. We can't quite describe the truth in words without it not quite being the truth. We can very readily encounter this in ourselves when we adopt any kind of religion or any kind of activity or practice in which we excel or which we become masters at. Part of that mastery is understanding our frailty in the midst of that mastery, really understanding our inability to approach the perfect or to approach that perfect mastery. And I will close with something that Ralph Waldo Emerson actually did say, I believe. And we are now men, and must accept in the highest mind the same transcendent destiny, and not minors and invalids in a protected corner, not cowards fleeing before a revolution, but guides, redeemers, and benefactors, obeying the almighty effort and advancing on chaos and the dark.